Hi, everybody. That's nice when people say hi back, and you say hi. Welcome to Unfinished Love Stories, Day 2. The theme for today is the silence of disconnection. And we're going to be hearing three stories about disconnection. None are from me this time. One is, two of them are just 100-word love stories, very short. And then one is long. A long story of disconnection. I'm so happy to be here with Raluca and Sorin and our band, Moderator, again. So in talking about disconnection, I'd like to talk first about connection. And this festival, the theme of the festival this year is silence, but I think the theme of this festival every year is connection. But I wonder what connection means. It's sort of a buzzword that means you're meeting people, you're getting close to people, you are, I don't know exactly. So in order to find out how we connect to people, I decided to look online and see if there were any easy instructions for how to connect to people, and there were. And here are some of those rules. How to connect with other people. Go out and try to, this is the first, go out and try to immerse yourself in situations that involve spending time with other people, such as events, concerts, and parties. You will have a better chance of meeting other people by going out than by staying cooped up in your house. You got that? You guys are doing very well with that so far. Very well. 2, practice smiling more and exuding a positive aura. People will be warier of individuals who exude a cold atmosphere and look too serious. So I'd like to have you all try this second one with someone sitting next to you. If you could turn to the person next to you and smile and exude a positive aura. Okay. Very good. Feeling very connected. Okay, now I'd like you to turn to the person next to you with a very serious and sober expression. All right, that didn't work too well. Let's move on to number 3. Make eye contact with the other person, but don't stare too long, or it may make the other person uncomfortable. So I'd like to have you, don't stare too long, or it will make the other person uncomfortable.
A bit, yes.
So I'd like you to look to the person next to you and make eye contact for a count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Very good. Was everybody comfortable with that? Okay, I'd like to have you do it again now. But don't look away and laugh. This is like serious business. This is connection. So look to the person next to you again, and this time you will maintain eye contact. No laughing. This is not a joke. This is serious stuff. Make eye contact for a count of 8. Okay, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, we got some stroking going on over here. 7, 8. Excellent. Was anyone uncomfortable with the longer count? Okay. So, if only connection were that simple, if only connection were as simple as following some rules and smiling and exuding a positive aura and staring into each other's eyes, if only connection were that simple. But it's very complicated. I'm thinking about my time here last night, which I had a wonderful time. I talked to so many people, and I'm in no way an expert at connection, but I was thinking of, like, what do we want from other people? If this festival is about connection, and you're meeting new people, the festival is going to disperse. You may not see these people again, but what do people want from other people? People want a feeling of being understood. They want maybe an emotional connection, maybe it's an intellectual connection, maybe it's a physical connection, a sexual connection. People were laughing at the sexual connection. Interesting. So last night when I'm sort of wandering around and I'm having conversations with people and overhearing conversations and seeing strangers dance together, and I was like, what is going on here? Like, who wants something from another person? How do you gauge what that is? How do you read information that's coming from those people? I had a conversation with several other people, and one woman said early on that she had just broken up with her boyfriend before coming to this festival. And that was an interesting piece of information. That could either mean she's vulnerable, that could mean she's excited to meet new people, and the group was sort of like, okay, how do I process that information? Are we empathetic? Does she want distraction? All of these clues feed into us and think, do we want to feel good for a moment? Do we think this could lead to a relationship down the road? Are we with someone already? Do we reveal that we're married? Do we reveal that we're single? And what signals does that send out into the world and out into the sort of atmosphere of what other people are judging and what they want from us? It's an interesting experiment to be sort of self-conscious in those moments and think, what is possible? What is possible for connection? And what are the limits of connection? And it went to a place where I heard a story, a woman that I was talking to for a while, who told me a story of her boyfriend at the time proposing to her and her needing to say no. And her needing to say no in kind of a cruel way that she felt bad about afterward, because she was afraid of doing it in a kind way that it wouldn't get the message across. And she felt bad about it. It was the sort of cruel to be kind sort of moment. And I was thinking about my own sort of losses along the way, and I realized that we were connecting over disconnection. And stories of disconnection open the door to connection. Loss opens the door to finding new people and new ways of being together. And if you don't experience loss and you don't experience disconnection, you can't experience connection. That is our transition into the stories we're going to hear today. And before we hear them, as we did yesterday, I want you all to think about a story from your own life where you've been deeply invested in someone, deeply in love, and either abruptly or gradually that went completely away. Not what you wanted to have happen. The love went away. Where did it go? Think about that story while you're listening to these stories. Thank you.
The first short story, it's called The Silence of Disconnection, and it's written by Elena Floroiu. I don't know if she's here. So, I've never hated a pair of sandals more than on that day. The traces of her presence in the apartment were obvious. I felt used. She was probably on cloud 9, like any other woman in the arms of her lover. He, I knew, was looking like a god. I kneeled for 3 seconds, then I put my shoes on and opened the door of the apartment. It was the perfect day to buy a new pair of sandals.
The next story is by Diana Andrea.
She here?
Diana, are you here? No? Okay.
No.
There's a place near the highway, Dor Mărunt. Every time we get near on our way to the seaside, I think about my father. He died 2 years ago. We didn't have a proper relationship, not based on admiration nor communication. He was just my father, the man who left me with the most toxic memories of all. So when I first passed near Dor Mărunt, I felt this is the best way to define what I feel for him now. Dor Mărunt, a longing not for what was between us, but for what could have been.
The next story, the long one, it's written by Ioana Cristina Casapu, and it's called...
Here she is.
Oh my God! Of course, yes. It's called When in Doubt, Look for a Butterfly. I was already nervous. Now, okay, let's do this. The heartache was wrecking. It was not just the storm, the cold Berlin night, and the prospect of spending it in a new shoebox apartment where I hadn't even moved my belongings. Surrounded by crates and piles of things, I sobbed. I wanted to be one with the floor, find a small dent in the wood, and hide there with all my misery. The floor smelled like fresh pine and felt soft against my back. I laid there for a while. My partner wasn't returning, and I couldn't go back to our old home. Despite our breakup months before, we had shared the same roof for a while. It was on this night, only within the confines of my newly rented apartment, that reality finally hit me. I gazed through the window of the black sky, possessed some magical ability to give my life a much-needed plot twist. If I am to move on from this, I said to myself, show me a butterfly in the next 48 hours. And if I was not to move past this, and still needed to endure and perhaps get back together with my ex, then the universe was to show me something else. As my mind searched for what that something else could be, the phone rang. It was a friend trying to convince me to meet her. I made up a chain of excuses. She pressed. It was Friday night. At the pub, I said to her, I won't ever have sex again. I wanted to return to my apartment and continue to lie on the floor, but her optimism won me over. Tonight, you'll see, she said, pointing at a man who was nursing a drink at the bar and chatting with the bartender. He's been looking at you. I have a feeling, I think he's your soulmate or something. I told my friend I was going home, but she pushed me to get another drink. I was now less than an arm's length from the man at the bar. I asked for a wine spritzer in German and waited. I eyed my friend, implying it was nonsense, and thought I would pay for the drink and go home. Then he spoke. He had a pleasant voice. He told me he was from Philadelphia and that the pub was his favorite in Berlin. He said he didn't speak German. Neither do I replied, adding that I was from Romania.
Then you must be from the part of Romania where they don't speak German.
He said. Clever, I thought. I went back to my friend and told her I didn't like his gray socks tucked in brown shoes. But I was open to at least having a conversation. Eventually, he came and sat with us. The conversation, to my surprise, went well, and after some time, my friend decided it was safe for her to leave us. Christopher was a scholar, a cultured, humbled, and refreshing companion. He said he felt at home in Europe, that he liked Vienna, where he lived for 6 months, as his visa allowed. He was visiting Berlin to meet old friends before returning to New York. As it became more apparent that we had a lot in common, we headed to a bar called Melody Nelson. At 2:22 in the morning, he leaned over and kissed me. It was February 2nd, 2020. We stayed up talking until the morning hours when he arrived at my place and crashed next to each other on the mattress. He made me breakfast of omelette and blueberries and talked with my landlord about assembling my kitchen table. My landlord thought Christopher was my partner. Over the next 2 weeks, we started to warm up to the idea of ourselves. We spent the afternoon like tourists, falling for each other and for the city's unnatural grace, despite the gray days and cold nights. He took me to the jazz concert, and I took him to the art museums. There was a strangely comfortable feeling of being in our house, and then there were our fears. Vulnerability found its way through our rose-tinted glasses, and in the days before he was to leave to New York, I caved to my fears and told him I couldn't do long distance. He said he was trying hard not to fall in love with me, and I shared the sentiment. Somehow, our accidental meeting and the circumstances of our lives on different continents, the unprocessed baggage of our previous relationships, made it difficult for us to believe that this could work. He gave me a copy of Barnes' The Noise of Time, and on the day he left, I slipped a hardcover of I Love You, Dick into his backpack. I would have liked to say, I love you, but neither of us dared to utter those words. It was too early, yet we were already attached. We made plans to meet in Berlin in 3 months, while my female friend and I had the spontaneous idea to visit New York that spring.
You are a beautiful person.
You are a beautiful person, he said. And he kissed my forehead. Then he hopped on a train to the airport. I went home and waited to hear that he had safely reached New York. 5 days later, several states entered lockdown. Christopher didn't make it to New York. He fell ill on the way and remained strained in Philadelphia at his parents' home for the next 2 years. Throughout confinement, I listened to Edith Piaf, who also loved someone in Berlin. Berlin means nothing to Edith Piaf, though, or maybe it means everything. Even under Berlin's dirty skies, she found eternity in a moment with a certain man. And then, because she is Edith Piaf and doesn't live happily ever after, it all ends. Christopher and I decided to break up when it became obvious that the borders would remain closed indefinitely. We broke up over Skype. It was April, and the empty streets gave way to the irrelevance of nature in bloom, with cherry blossoms and lilacs sprouting everywhere. I stopped seeing airplanes from my attic window. The world has stopped. Everything was silent. I received a grant for a pandemic-themed art residency and threw myself into work. He focused on his family and writing. Nearly 1 year passed before we reconnected online and clumsily turned our initial romance into friendship. For the longest time, we had been the last people each of us had touched. And there was a tenderness to it. The absence felt strange and suffocating. I had lost not one person I loved, but two. The grief from my previous relationship and that of a new love cut short grew, begging for my care. I carried the grief with me like a small child, set in the imminent loneliness and disconnection from familiarity, closeness, and touch, and the year turned very much into one of magical thinking. When Melody Nelson closed in July 2021, I was sad. One day after work, I went to have a Bloody Mary at the pub where I originally met Christopher. The pub owner and I were the only people there. He remembered me and Christopher. "We need more love stories," he said. We had many love stories with Berlin and in Berlin, even if most of them ended. Many of the old places closed and the people went away. I replied that what remained were good friends, other places and memories. I thought of the many emails Christopher and I wrote to each other to preserve the memories. But in the end, everything is replaced by something else. The sadness of the world and even the sadness of the night when, while lingering on the floor, I asked the universe for a sign to help me move forward from heartbreak. The pub owner put music on, and for some reason, I released movement in my body. I started dancing by myself. I picture a day when I could throw a big party at home where all my friends and old lovers and my parents are finally came all together celebrating the end of the global catastrophe we were in. I imagined the whole scene and kept dancing in a trance-like state until the voice of Edith Piaf broke, as if out of nowhere, as songs usually do. I gazed at the empty pub, washed in a golden hour, and envisioned Christopher sitting across from my friend that night. A seemingly forgotten detail popped in my mind.
What is this?
"What is this?" he asked, pointing at a tattoo on her wrist. "It's a butterfly," my friend exclaimed. My face illuminated, as if struck by a dash of the divine. My heart has been like a cocoon that survived, specifically because it was torn open. Our story was short-lived, like a butterfly, but I regretted nothing. I smiled. My prayer to the universe has been heard and answered. And if it happened then, it could happen again. If only I let it.
Beautiful, both of you. So I asked you to think about, before and while these stories were being read, about your own story of abrupt disconnection, of a love that evaporated for you. As with yesterday, if you're sitting next to someone you know, find someone you don't know who's nearby, and share that story with that person, and have that person share their story with you. Go. Bring it down, bring it down. I don't know if you were engaged in your own stories and weren't able to look around, but from our perspective, that was a beautiful sight to see people telling stories to each other, seeing them embrace after a story's been told, support each other. That's kind of a beautiful thing to have just materialize out of nothing. That was amazing. Thank you very much. You know what's coming. If anyone would like to share their story with the group, now's the time. Who would like to share their story with the group? First one's always the hardest. It is a bigger group than yesterday. I feel for you. Excellent. Here we go.
So just a short question. It was about a story about disconnection, right? Because at the beginning you said about longing for someone.
Oh, yeah, that was yesterday, yeah.
Okay.
Similar, though, similar.
So it's a bit of a sad story, not for me anymore, but it was back then. I was with a girl for some time. Wasn't necessarily something serious, but it was like a sweet relationship.
Mm-hmm.
We at some point didn't see each other anymore. And 1 year passed, and I hear from some friends of the girl that she started, getting religious and going to the church and stuff like that. And I was like, it's not necessarily her type, but okay.
Mm-hmm.
But they were saying like she went crazy, and actually that's what happened. She had like a schizophrenia outbreak. And at some point, her parents wanted to get her into to go to a psychiatrist to treat herself, but she didn't want it, and they had a fight that day, and the next day they found her, she committed suicide, basically.
Oh my God.
So yeah.
How long ago did this happen?
This was like, 5 years ago.
Oh. And how did you feel after that? How did you process that?
Yeah, I was talking with them. Then I don't know if it was more the shock of someone dying, someone close dying, or that the fact that she wasn't there, and we had like a beautiful little thing at some point. But yeah, it was a bit heartbreaking. Yeah.
My God, thank you for sharing that story. Would you like to go?
I want to bring the discussion towards not love stories, but relationships in general. And this is about me disconnecting with some friends, girlfriends. So my friends, 2 of them actually. One who I knew from the first grade, and one more recent. we grew apart. It just happened. There are very long stories to this. But what I realized after this, first of all, it seems like the stories between us never ended just because we didn't have closure. It was their choice to fall apart. I was the last one to send a message, for example. So let's say that they kind of ghosted me.
Yeah.
It hurts and it doesn't hurt. I feel like we should be grown-ups, except when people don't accept us anymore, or we don't have the same path. And with disconnections in general, I feel like, or what I found out is that sometimes we don't get to have a closure, but in the end, it's fine if we don't have a closure. Sometimes we just have to let things go and go out and meet some new people.
Yeah.
And yeah, I still have a lot of friends, but just these two have been on my mind lately because, yeah, and I got to close them for myself, let's say.
Yeah. Thank you very much. We were, one of the more interesting conversations I had last night was talking about friendships ending and how it can be harder to end a friendship than a romantic relationship. And we were trying to puzzle that out. Like, why would that be? And one guess was, with romantic relationships, at least if you're monogamous and you are with one person at a time, you have to end a relationship to start another. And you don't have to end a friendship to start another. So there's no like crisis, like there's no like I have to move on from you. So it's really just rejection. It's just really like this, I don't want this anymore. It's not that I have to get rid of this to have something else. It's a stronger kind of, it's a stronger emotion, and it's hard. It's hard. Any other hands up? Yes. No. Who was you? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It's my story, but it's not really my story. When I was growing up, I had kind of sort of a second grandma. She was my nanny. We lost connection because I grew up and she just grew. Well, I heard recently about her from my mom. Apparently, she developed Alzheimer, and her husband did as well. The positive side is that they live in the same home now, and apparently they reconnect each time. They discover each other day by day, and they actually like each other. They love each other. Even though they don't fully recognize one another, they still find this love and connection day by day, I suppose.
That's
So
wonderful.
that's a little story.
Thanks. Yes.
Thank you. This is 2016. I couldn't share with my partner here because we didn't have enough time, so I'm going to share with everybody.
Oh, good, perfect.
So I was living in a mountain town in India, in Rishikesh, and I met someone from Sweden. And I used to have a restaurant, so I was working as a waiter, as a manager, as everything, because it was my restaurant. So I was with some dishes in my hand, and I saw this girl across the room, and our eyes just locked. And so I delivered the food. I sat next to her the rest of the evening, and we talked. But it was more complicated than that. Someone else was waiting for me somewhere else. And yeah, I know. We had this magical connection. It was nothing like ever before. And we spent a month together. But we both knew that it cannot go on. So she left. And also the deal was that we're not going to keep in touch. Since it was a random meeting, we didn't have common friends. So there was no Facebook, no WhatsApp, no Instagram. We didn't share anything. And then I was with someone, and I had promised myself that whenever I'm not with this someone, I would try to get back to her. And then 5 years passed.
Wow.
And it was actually during the pandemic when I was finishing a relationship, and I thought of her, and I tried to look for her. And after some attempts, I found, when you don't know where is that someone, you feel like, what if they died? No, really. And so when I found her, and I was so happy that she's alive, and she was like, I was also thinking, maybe he died. The most interesting thing is that I met her in a point in life when it was like we were going in other different directions, and we just met at that point only to share those moments together. Yeah. And I didn't know how much impact I had on her, but I knew that she had a lot of impact on me. My way of thinking and philosophizing and everything changed from that point, and I always gave credit to her. She was my magic fairy. But 4 or 5 years later, when I talked to her, I figured out that she was deeply impacted by me, by Hinduism, by spirituality. She had started learning Hindi, playing harmonium and chanting mantras.
Wow.
And she had written like 4 poetry books. And it was, so it was amazing to realize that. But we also realized that we kind of grew very differently at the same time for 5 years. So it was not going to go anywhere. But now we both know that we are alive and we are in touch. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it went as far as it can go in shaping each other's lives like that from going forward. Yeah. Someone over here. Get one more.
Okay. So when you asked the beginning to think about something, actually nothing crossed my mind. That's probably because I stayed up until 7 a.m. with a friend to talk about everything we experienced yesterday. Mm-hmm. But when someone there was talking, something clicked in my mind, something that I realized I have to solve, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna get emotional probably, but I put this inside so deep. It's a story about my stepfather, actually. So, long story short, when I was 4, my parents divorced. The relationship with my first father is okay right now. We have a bond and everything. But a second father appeared in my life. And we connected on some level that my sister never did. Fast forward, I'm 15, and they broke up, they divorced, and basically I'm going to a second divorce in my childhood. And I'm truly mad at him because I do not remember the last day I saw him, and he never kept a promise. He said that we would go to climb Piatra Craiului together. That's a mountain here in Romania, and it was our thing. And I know that for a long time, I didn't know anything about him. And 1 year ago, I was back at the dance club where I did dance courses when I was up until 19 years old. And my dance teacher, she had met him before because she knew me since I was 6. She told me that he is remarried with a woman that he left when he left my mom, and they had a daughter, and basically now he's a dad for someone else.
Yeah.
And I never told this out loud, even to my friends. But I'm truly mad about this disconnection.
Yeah.
And that just clicked when, I don't know.
How does it... You're so brave to tell that story. It's storytelling can be so cathartic. And to think that at the beginning nothing came to mind shows how pushed down that was. And we all do that. And I have a good friend who's a psychotherapist who talks about anything that you push down is there. And you can cover it up with however many layers you want, but it's there, and you have to deal with it at some point. The ghosts of the past sort of remain with you, and talking through that and sharing your story. I can't quite believe you had the bravery to share it for the first time in this setting, but it also speaks to the sort of warmth of this room and of this conference and the trust that this group sort of makes people feel. It's really special. Thank you. And thank you all. This has been a real pleasure. I love that this has become a series, and I hope we can do it again next year. Thank you.
Thank you.